Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of the Game Trilogy, 3 Japanese crime action flicks from 1978 and 1979 that were directed by Toru Murakawa, a director who I am completely unfamiliar with. I've seen nothing else from this guy, so it was nice to explore his work with this trilogy of films. Now, the Game Trilogy stars Yusaku Matsuda, the father of both Ryuhei Matsuda and Shota Matsuda, 2 fairly popular actors that are still active nowadays. Now, most American movie fans would recognize this actor from the Ridley Scott film Black Rain, but I've read that some popular anime characters were inspired by his style. In any case, let's briefly discuss each of these game movies. So you have The Most Dangerous Game from 1978, and no, this has nothing to do with the short story by Richard Connell, which spawned or influenced a number of films. It's not about a man who is hunted by aristocrats. Instead, this is a traditional Japanese crime flick. An assassin named Narumi is hired to recover a kidnap victim, but becomes embroiled in a vicious power struggle between 2 large corporations over a sizable government defense contract. Now, the style of the film is very 1970s, so to speak. You know, it opens at night, you get some shady-looking men smoking and gambling, and then there's some saxophone music in the background. It's just like classic stuff, you know. If you're into that kind of aesthetic, you'll like this right off the bat. And our protagonist is actually kind of humanized in the beginning of the film. You know, he gets beat up quite a bit throughout this trilogy, which is nice. You know, he's a normal dude who's working a dangerous hitman job, but he is good at his job. He takes his job seriously, and even his workout sequences are pretty intense, which are quite amusing. He's a tough guy, but he has a mean streak, too, in these films. Again, very 1970s, does not treat women particularly well, so just look out for that. But he's still a pretty cool guy to follow, and Yusaku Matsuda's portrayal is more entertaining than you would expect, given the role. The story's pretty basic, but the shady hitman contractor is kind of interesting. He's like a side character who pops up at times. You definitely don't trust the guy, and so I kind of liked him. The final shot was slightly humorous as well, which is quite odd, actually. But in terms of action, all of these movies have a similar structure. You know, the action is sprinkled in throughout maybe the opening hour, and then it ramps up during the final half hour, you know, the final big act where all the conflicts kind of clash together. One highlight in this film is a fist fight near an outdoor restroom that's pretty intense, and there's a finale shootout, which is probably the best set piece. It involves some snipers, a helicopter, some rooftops, and other stuff. So The Most Dangerous Game is an entertaining, old-school style actioner, is how I would describe it. Now you get on to the sequel, which is called The Killing Game from 1978. After making a sensational kill, Narumi has gone into hiding for 5 years. When he comes back, he bumps into 2 women that he spared 5 years ago. 2 rival yakuza bosses hire him to kill their competition, but will his sense of chivalry entrap him again? So like its predecessor, this film takes a little while for the action to ramp up, but the second half is pretty fast-paced stuff. You know, our protagonist is like running from thugs, fighting them, like throughout much of the second half of the film. There is a shootout in a hallway that's shot in a single take, and I was kind of surprised with that scene. I wasn't quite expecting a scene like that in this, and it was quite impressive. You know, shooting scenes like that, I don't know how many takes they would have needed, you know, to shoot a scene without an edit that long, but it's impressive they were able to pull it off. The finale has a similar shootout that's shot in very long takes. And there's a slow motion kill near the end that's very cool. It's a very cool shot. So the camera work and long takes are definitely standouts in this sequel and an upgrade over the original. And then as an added bonus, we get some little bells and whistles that were in the first movie, like, you know, a brief workout scene that's always amusing, and the final scene, which has a slightly humorous vibe again. So I think The Killing Game is actually kind of a step up from its predecessor. Cool flick. Then finally, we have The Execution Game from 1979. Narumi is set up by a mysterious woman. Abducted and tortured, he's forced to take on a new job, and the target is a veteran killer as good as he is. So the film begins with our protagonist just like waking up after being knocked out, and he's like tied up in like a villain lair of some sort, and he escapes his roped hands using some impressive athletics, and the actor must have done this himself, which means that he was definitely in shape. I was pretty impressed by the opening, like, I guess, escape scene where he gets out of his ropes. But he still gets roughed up by some baddies at some point and given an ultimatum to, like, a hit, basically, that he has to do. And he also has to maneuver his way through the hit job while taking into consideration the presence of a former love interest who is involved with the target. And in this film, though, I thought the love interest element was actually kind of dull. I liked the female characters in the first two movies. I think they weren't especially deep, but they were fun to watch, entertaining, that type of thing. But the girl in this one was like, she was real flat, had like no personality, and that kind of hurt the pacing of the film a little bit during the middle section. But the action picks up, of course, during the final half hour. Get some shootouts, some very long takes again. This kind of mirrors the second film in terms of quality of action. So these movies deliver on the action front, I think. There were some goofs in this movie that I noticed, though. Like there's a scene where our protagonist shoots a dude through a window, but then the window's still there. It's a really weird shot. I was kind of confused by it when I was watching the film, so look out for that. That was quite an odd goof. But with that said, Execution Game is probably on par with the first film of the franchise. Entertaining stuff, but the flaws are more noticeable in this one. So I would say overall it's a good trilogy of films. I recommend them. I don't remember ever hearing about the Game Trilogy before. I just don't remember it. Prior to the recent Blu-ray release from Arrow Video, and that's how I heard about them. So, that's a Region A release, by the way. So this is a good example of how a physical media release can still, introduce you to something that you've never seen otherwise. So it's good that's still happening. The good news is that these movies are also available to stream on both YouTube and Amazon. So check them out. I think if you're into like old school like action flicks, you'll like them. And as always, folks, I'll see you next time.